What does it mean to have a look-in provision in the new approved CFP contract? That means that in 2028, we can look around every conference and say who deserves more money and who deserves less. If you've been keeping up, the Big Ten and the SEC are making about twice as much as the Big 12 and the ACC per school. Actually, the ACC is getting more money than the Big 12 in the approved college football playoff contract, setting a complete, and when I say almost double, I mean the SEC and the Big 10 are in their own stratosphere now, and the ACC and the Big 12 are behind. But what Brett Yormark pushed for, I love it, Brett. I love it. What Brett Yormark pushed for was like, oh, wait a second. Let's create a look-in clause that in a couple of years, we can all say, hey, due to expansion and realignment, these conferences are now worth more money than they were. Here's what that created. From a Big 12 standpoint, what Yormark wants to do is go to the ACC, take you. If Louisville's profitable, we'll take Louisville. If Miami's profitable and they can't go to the Big Ten or the SEC, we'll take them. If a Pitt is profitable, we'll take them. That helps the Big 12 catch up. The death of the ACC can help the Big 12 catch up to the Big 10 and the SEC. But guess what? That look-in clause also applies to the Big 10 and the SEC. So if we get to 2028 and the SEC has added Clemson, whose recent valuation was very good, if the SEC has also added UNC and Virginia and captured a new footprint from a media market standpoint, if the SEC has as well captured, say, a Miami and said, all right, we're done, those are our four, then they are more valuable than the Big 10. As we've effectively decided right now, the Big Ten and the SEC are even in college football playoff revenue distribution. But if the Southeastern Conference has Clemson and Florida State, they have now trumped the Big Ten and they will make more money. So that look in 2028, it was great for the Big 12. And we talked about it a week ago. It looked like Brett Yormark saying, I'm going to go expand. I'm going to compete with the SEC and the Big Ten. Here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to the ACC and pick and choose the teams that I want. But then the SEC thought, wait a second, we're already making a lot of money. We're making way more than the ACC and the Big 12, but we could make way more than way more if we find the profitable brands in the ACC. And that is what's happening. Make no mistake, when that look-in was set, when we said, fine, we'll reevaluate it in a few years, the SEC and the Big 10 thought, how can we further attack to make more money when the look-in is actually realized? Clemson did not sue the ACC. They did not intend to leave the ACC on a whim. They didn't do that because they don't have a landing spot. There is no way they said, oh, cart before the horse. We'll sue, we'll get out, then we'll find a suitor. No, it has to be somewhere underneath. Somebody in the SEC or the Big Ten said, Clemson, we'll take you. And you know who facilitates all of this? ESPN. Based on what we found, when Florida State said, hey, reveal us the grant of rights of the ACC, what did we really sign up for? ESPN can opt out of its contract past 2027 and just not pay the ACC anymore. And if ESPN, who has the SEC by the throat, knows that it can make more money, if this TV network can make more money by having Clemson in the SEC and Florida State in the SEC, guess who calls the shots? Guess who makes these decisions? It is the network. It is the TV. So when ESPN says this property can make us more money somewhere else, that property, a la Clemson, a la Florida State, says, if you make more money, we make more money. We get a bigger cut because we're out of the ACC and we get a very large margin of money from the college football playoff and a very large margin of money from our TV contract. So if it comes to fruition that Clemson can leave and their rights to their games is no longer held by the ACC when they're not playing in the ACC, at that point, they leave. And where do they go? Wherever ESPN wants them to. Make no mistake that, or Fox, wherever a TV, the highest bidder, the biggest suitor here from a TV network that wants Clemson here or there, that's who wins these battles. That's who calls these shots. It's the TV executives because they have the conferences completely on lock here. These leagues are making money off of what? TV revenue. The television revenue is where everything is. It's not how many fans fill the stands. And brother, it's not how many games you win. I know what you've been hearing me say is like Virginia is a real piece in this, or that North Carolina is a real piece in this. And you think, Historically, those two are not wild football contenders. They're not blue bloods. They're not teams you think of when you think about the best programs in America. And that doesn't matter. Wins and losses have never mattered in expansion. The only thing that does is your footprint, is the money you bring in. And maybe the biggest exception to that is Clemson. Here's what I want you to think about. And this is why I think the Big 12 can stay alive. And the point that I'm going to make in the final segment of this show is the Big 12's best expansion shake starts in the state of Kentucky. Louisville. Louisville makes an absurd amount. They're not the flagship program of Kentucky. They make an absurd amount of money in their athletics program. They are historically a better brand altogether from a financial aspect, athletically, than Clemson. And you're going, oh, that doesn't make any sense. No chance. It's not true. No. Hear me out. Clemson was nobody 15 years ago. We didn't care. Had Clemson left the ACC 15 years ago, we were all sat and laughed. We're like, what are you doing? You have no power here. You're a founding member of the conference, sure, but nobody really cares about you. Then they spent 10 years winning. Then they rattled off a couple national championships. They had the college football playoff valuation recently that said Clemson is a profitable school. That's what Clemson won their way to the brand they have. Again, 15 years ago, we didn't really care. What if Louisville wins its way? Because I think if Louisville spent a 10-year stretch where they won 2 national championships and they did what Clemson has done, they'd be even bigger than Clemson. And they're on the table. They're on the table for the Big 12 to stay alive. And my hope is that ESPN sees that and sees profit in it. On Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Nissan. If you want to drive like me, drive a Nissan. I literally drive a Nissan. It's sitting outside of my house right now, my old Nissan Maxima. Or today, you can get a Nissan Armada, which I also like. Speaking of that Armada, the Yukon Huskies can only be described as an Armada. The top-seeded team is a hardcore squad that gets the job done. It's no wonder they landed the top overall seed. They're one of the favorites to win it, despite 4 of the Power 6 conference champions standing in their way in the East region. The Armada is the same dang way, hardcore as it gets. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure at shopnissanusa.com. It is shopnissanusa.com to put yourself in an Armada. Drive a Nissan, drive like me at nissanusa.com.